Well, I need to open the meeting officially here.
Oh,
You
okay.
can't just start
Sorry about
talking.
I can.
Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Richmond Ions Community Group. What month are we in? September 2023 meeting. I've been away, as some of you know, and so I've lost track of time. We have to do an official opening for our Ions group, you know. So, in any event, as most of you know, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, or otherwise known as IONS, is an organization that was begun by Edgar Mitchell, who was an Apollo. He was the lunar landing module pilot for Apollo 14, and was had I think a Ph.D. in aeronautical engineering, and was a Navy test pilot, and like some of the other fellows who walked on the moon back in the 1970s as part of the Apollo program, he had his own takeaway from the experience, which was a unity consciousness experience he had while returning from the moon, as he looked down and saw the Earth as a pale blue dot off in space. And that experience inspired him to want to spend the remainder of his life exploring the frontiers of consciousness, especially the interface between science and spirit. And so he created IONS in I believe it was July of 1973 as a vehicle for that pursuit. And IONS, as you know, is headquartered in Petaluma, California. It has done all sorts of wonderful things worldwide. There are community groups worldwide, mostly in the English-speaking part of the world, in Australia and so forth, although there are a number of them in continental Europe, and also of course, across the US and Canada, and even some in South America. We have been extremely blessed in this particular IONS community group to have enjoyed a run of almost 28 years now of continuous operations. I was telling P.M.H on the way over here that I think we may be the oldest continuously operated IONS community group on planet Earth, and we're going to be celebrating our 28th anniversary in January. And we have been blessed throughout that time to have had wonderful presenters who have come before us and given insights, and none of those has been more prolific in their presentation than today's speaker. And before I get to that, we got some announcements I got to make. Susanna, you're going to make an announcement about your practice series.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Just a reminder that our spiritual practice series is a complement to the noetic science of IONS, and we meet usually the first Wednesday of the month on Zoom at 7 p.m. and that comes in your email if you're on the mailing list, and if you're here in the room, you got the little flyer. The other thing that we are doing in partnership, and this is in partnership with the Sanctuary of Earth, the other thing we are doing in partnership with Sanctuary of Earth is starting to offer classes. So we're launching our first offering of intuitive practice classes. It's our community pilot, and we hope you will join us. So we're offering clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairempathy starting October 10th, January 9th, and February 27th, respectively. The exchange is $125 for a 6-week program, which is an hour and a half each, and we can either do hybrid or by Zoom. I have flyers here and a sign-up sheet, because we're going to do this the old-fashioned way for a while till we get set up. So if you want to sign up and just let me know you're interested, you can put your contact information, and it's also on here on the flyer. I'm going to just pass this little pad around, and you can take a flyer and sign up if you want. Just please make sure it keeps moving around the room.
All right. Let's see, what else? We've got, as we have these tables of books. Robert, that's Robert Bushman's book exchange. I think he's trying to get rid of all of his books on that group here. And so, so anyway, they're free. Now, our speaker today also has books over here that are almost free, but not quite. But they're wonderful books. And she just published her memoir, I think in June of this year. And so we're early on in her book tour, and we're very blessed to have her here today. We normally do an opening meditation. Do you want me to do that, or do you want to do that, or you don't want to bother with it?
Go ahead.
All right. All right, everyone. Let's just take a couple of moments. Put both feet on the floor. Put your hands in a resting pose. Let those parts of the avatar that you identify yourself with, that your soul identifies itself with, just completely relax. Take a couple of deep breaths, maybe 3 instead of just 2. And open up to your hearts and your spirit for some wonderful information and some wonderful heartfelt communication that we're going to have from our speaker today. And the exciting journey she is going to take each and all of us on in the next hour and 40 minutes. Take a couple more deep breaths. And open your eyes. Thank you. Now, P.M.H is, as most of you know, many of you know, is the most frequent outside speaker this group has ever had. She has been incredibly generous with her time and energy for our group. Going back, I think, to about 1997 or 8, when she first appeared before our group, and has come before us with almost every new book that she's published since then. And she's published 19 books, a number of them before then, but I think this is her 8th or 9th appearance before our group. And listen to her never gets old, just like she never gets old. And what I was thrilled to learn on the way here today, because since she's publishing this current book as a memoir, and I had made a faulty assumption that it might be her last book, but she let me know today that she's got a new project underway that some ET group or something has come forth and demanded that she do something else. So that's maybe more work for her than she would prefer, but it's a blessing for all of us, and we look forward to whatever book comes out of that. And we maybe we'll even hear a little bit about it today. But I'd like to all of us give a warm welcome to the most prolific NDE researcher on planet Earth, P.M.H. Atwater. Thank you so much.
Oh, he's so kind. Well, hi there. Let's just get it started with a good, healthy hi there. I come from Idaho. That means I'm Western. That means I get to the point. So the point here is certainly near-death experiences. And I want to share with you the latest of the latest. That means last week, I was attending the International Association of Near-Death Studies, their big conference up in Arlington, over 600 people attending. And they revealed the very latest information. Every day in the United States today, every day in the US, we have 774 people having a near-death experience. Every day. 774 people are now having a near-death experience. I think that's quite incredible. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself as a lead-in to my own experience and what came after that. Again, I'm from Idaho, born in Twin Falls, died in Boise. Ever since childhood, I can't remember a time when I haven't climbed edges, been on the edge of something, climbed canyon walls, always been out there in the desert. I was born maybe about 3/4 of a mile from the rim of the big Snake River Canyon, massive canyon. And for me, canyons, deserts, volcanic ash, volcano, you know, old cones, that's home. That's where I come from. And certainly farmland, yes. But my favorite was always the canyons. Love to climb those things. Finally left Twin Falls, married, settled in Boise. Boise is the capital city of Idaho. Was in Boise for a long time. One of the things I did while I was in Boise, started out as a secretary, but wound up working for the Idaho Department of Commerce and Development, which means I was in the State House, the Capitol building, and I worked a number of years there. One of the things that was important for me at that time was to make sure everybody in Idaho knew about where you could go for adventure, where you could go to find something new. So I published a statewide column, Where to Go in Idaho. Won a number of prizes for that, by the way. While doing that, I noticed that a lot of people were not in tune with themselves. Were not in tune with their life. Were not in tune with the world around them. They couldn't go up to a tree and say, "How are you?" and get a reply. I thought that was rather odd. So I started, I started various groups, and then I became part of groups myself. learned more about out-of-body travel. One of the things we did, 3 days, everybody came, bring your sleeping bags, day and night. We would practice out-of-body traveling. And one of the great things that we did, the people who ran this concession had different people in different homes way out, clued in that we might be, they might have some visitors. So we at the particular place where we were, once you left your body, you could go to these different places, see what you could see, hear what you could hear. And when the exercise was over, then our leader would call the people in the houses and say, was this true? So we could then talk about what we saw and heard, and the person on the phone. That's the days when you had real phones, you you hold a phone, and well, anyway. And the people on the other end would say, well, this is true, or this is not true, or this is what our parlor looks like, or such and such is growing in our garden, or whatever. And we all passed. We all got it. We in this one little house could find out what was going on in all these other houses way, way far away by instant verification. Yes, this was true, or no, this wasn't true. So they had those kind of tests and biorhythms and mediumship. The very first time that we had a medium come to Boise, Idaho, and a big thing in the newspaper because he was one of those who was with the Red Bishop on television, talking about his son who had committed suicide. So the medium who brought this all forward on national television, we had it there in Boise. Big, big newspaper coverage, lots of coverage. But in the coverage, they failed to say where the meeting was or what time. So I'm at this big hotel waiting for all the people to come and thinking, how could this happen? Because I previously called the newspaper office. You left out the most important thing. Where? And what time? And, it's too late to, carry any kind of retraction in the paper. So I'm at this big hall, waiting and wondering, okay, God, what do we do now? Waited and waited, and pretty soon, dozens of people came. More than a dozen. Hundreds of people came. And I'm saying to myself, how did they know where to go or what time? They did. we had a packed house with nobody knowing where to go or what time. The place was packed. And I'm standing up in the back saying, God, I don't know how you did this, but thank you. We did a lot of big things, psychic fairs, all kinds of things in Boise, Idaho. And finally I decided, well, it's time to incorporate. So I went to the Attorney General's office and said, let's incorporate this. We're calling it Inner Forum. And yes, we became the first metaphysical corporation in the state of Idaho. Thanks to the Attorney General. Isn't that fun? Doing all those kinds of things. Yes. And finally the day came when I thought, it's time to pass it on to other people. It's time for me to do something else. And, maybe I have a few people over, once a week in the house, but, not do the big thing, not doing the big thing anymore. Now somebody else is doing it. It is time for me to become a bank manager. Yep, that's what I did. I decided to walk out on my life and become a bank manager. And I was taking classes in bank management when I was raped, became pregnant, miscarried. Now we're talking about 1977. We're talking about January 2nd, my first near-death experience. Well, I should say my first death and my first near-death experience. January 4, 2 days later, my second death and near-death experience. And we're talking March 29, my third death and near-death experience. I will say to you that everything I knew before was gone. Everything gone. I had to relearn how to crawl, how to stand, how to tell the difference between left and right, how to see properly, hear properly, and challenge everything in my world. Later that fall, specifically in November, but later in that fall, actually September, October, I had 3 relapses. So in 1977, I was tossing everything out the door. I didn't know what pots and pans were, so I threw them out. I sent off to the major makers of metallurgical pots and pans to get their specs, and then I would have them tested at a local lab. And I threw away any pot or pan with bronze at the bottom. Throw your bronze bottom pots and pans away. Threw away all Teflon. Get rid of that stuff. I went to solid steel. That's what I use now. I was tossing sheets, soap, clothes. I was tossing everything because it didn't have meaning anymore. wasn't what, it wouldn't behoove the new me. It just wouldn't work anymore. Who was I? And the two things that I turned to and became a part of were what saved me. Two books. Dune by Frank Herbert, The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. I became each character in each book. I became Dune. I became the Lord of the Rings. And that's how I saved my sanity. That's how I learned what Earth was. That's what I learned what human beings are. That's what I learned, how to be me again, the new me, or any kind of me, whatever kind of me. That's how I learned what me was, human beings are. Death number one was pretty much an out-of-body experience. I think you've heard a lot about those. I miscarried in the bathroom, rose up. I kept bumping into the light fixture, not some heavenly light. For me, it was a light fixture and it was on. I kept bumping into that light fixture and kept saying, why? Why am I up here at the light fixture? And down there's the toilet, and down there's the bathtub, and there's the sink. Why am I up here? I just kept bumping into the light bulb and questioning. And every time I had a question, there would be blobs that would form in the air, sort of like an ink blob, only fully dimensional blobs. And there were more and more and more blobs, and I couldn't figure out what and suddenly I found myself jerked back into my body, sort of like a rubber band let go. I was jerked back to my feet and re-entering the body. I was bigger outside of the body than I am inside the body. You don't lose who you are. I'm Mrs. Clean. So the first thing I did was clean the bathtub and the floor, and first thing I did was clean my bathroom. and then I went back to bed. I went to bed. I got all kinds of pillows, and I propped up my legs on these pillows, and I went to sleep. I can always go to sleep. I'm a cop's kid, raised in Twin Falls, Idaho, raised, often in the police station, because whenever I would miss school, I would walk to the police station, and Dad, during his coffee breaks, would take me home. So I'm a cop's kid, raised in a police station. That's where I was. And so my first dad would always say they used the field outside of my bedroom for gunnery practice. I never heard a single gun. I accused my dad of lying to me. Never heard him. So, I went to sleep like that, like I've always gone to sleep. Totally gone. And then in the morning, My son was gone, the oldest daughter and youngest daughter were still home. That was a Monday. It said, you know, should we call in? You being late at work. And I said, sure, go ahead. And the girls went to school. And I wasn't doing so well. Suddenly my right leg began to hurt as it has never hurt before. And the thought occurred to me that I needed to go to a doctor. Now, for an Idahoan to say that, that's big. Because you take care of yourself. And finally it occurred to me that, well, maybe I need some help. So I got out of bed, and how I got to the dining room, I was crawling because I could no longer walk. So I was crawling. This time I made it to the dining room. In those days, you didn't have a lot of phones. We only had one phone, a wall phone in the kitchen. That's it. I was trying to make it to the wall phone in the kitchen, made it as far as the dining room, and I died. And this time I looked down and thought, am I really dead? So I came down and hovered over my body for a while, and waiting for someone to heave or, you know, smell, or just hovering to see, is there any kind of life left? And there wasn't. So I floated back up to the top, and I thought, I was so happy. I was happy to get rid of that body. I was just happy. And so I twirled around the dining room light fixture. It was not on, but I twirled around, and you know, and I sang, and I was happy to be out of that body. No more body. Good. And then suddenly there were blobs forming in the air again. Only these were pastel and translucent, and they were pretty. And it finally occurred to me that those are my thoughts. Every time I thought a thought, there'd be another blob. Now, oh, I'm causing these. I'm creating these. Aha. You know, I did my first double-blind study with a, well, I was very, very careful doing my first double-blind study at the age of 5, wanting to make sure, you know, what's what and what isn't what. So here I am doing another experiment. Always loved experiments. Okay, I wonder if I can make a house, and a specific kind of house, white house, with 3 floors going up here, and have a porch, pillars, a copper doorknobs, and as I am designing my porch, my dining room disappears, the house disappears, and suddenly I'm in another dimension. And it's wonderful and beautiful to be there. And so I continue with my house. And by golly, I did it. I did it. And I went up to my house and I, you know, stomped around and tried the doorknob and windows, and it's a real house. Said, oh, I wonder if I can create an oak tree. Yeah. House is inanimate. Can I create an oak tree which is animate? By golly, I got my tree, giant tree, complete with insect holes. Wow, I did it. And then comes people who died and gone on before me, especially relatives, and especially a grandfather I had never met. No way I could have met him. And he came up to me and introduced himself to me. And we talked, and I came to realize I have a lot of his traits. Couldn't find him in any other place in the family, but here's the man who gave him to me. Wow. I'm meeting my grandfather. And talked with a lot of them, and then Jesus came. Always wanted to see Jesus. Never the idea that of bowing to Jesus, but he was my elder brother, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. And I ran up to him and hugged him, and he hugged me, and we laughed, and we hugged, and we laughed. And then he left. And then my loved ones left. And then I thought, well, it's time for what I created to leave too. And that's when and that's when I discovered I'm in the void. The void. There's nothing in the void. Yet, everything that has ever existed or ever will exist is in the void. Nothing. Everything in the void. And the only thing I could discover in there, it's kind of black, darkish, was a sense of shame. If you've ever done a Jello dish, special Jello dish, and you put it upside down on a platter, and you go to touch it, and just as you were about to touch the Jello, there's a shimmer. That's what's in the void. That's what the void is made of. Shimmer. Wow. And in the void, I forgave myself for everything I ever did that was wrong or didn't fit, wasn't right. Who knows? Wow. And in that sense of forgiveness, and in that sense of love, and in that sense of discovery, and in that sense of allness, I forgave myself for anything I had ever done that wasn't cool, wasn't right, whatever. And I floated back down into my body, ever so gently. And instead of going the remaining 3.5 feet to the kitchen to get the phone, I turned around and crawled back to my bed. I was there in a stupor for about 2 days. Had no idea who anybody was. Me, my children, pots and pans, newspaper. The only coherent thought that finally came through, get prepared for this, was money. Because I had to go to work to be able to pay my bills and to exist. Money. How I got into my car and drove all the way down. Boise, it's kind of like a cup. The Capitol building and the main part of Boise, it's at the bottom of the cup. And it has all kinds of ledges all around the cup. And we lived on the first ledge. How I got down there, I don't know. At that time, they were building a new bank building. So they were renting another space. So all of the administration were in the other space. And it did not have an elevator, and I was on the second floor. So how I ever climbed those stairs, I don't know. Went up a couple of stairs, back a couple, up a couple, back a couple. Finally got to the top. And my boss happened to walk by. And she screamed. She said, "You look like you're half dead." She got me to a doctor. I have failed to mention here that after the first one, I did indeed go to a doctor. And he gave me, he laughed at me. Laughed and laughed and laughed. Because he thought it was funny that a woman of my age had gotten pregnant. You know, about the rape, no, that didn't matter to him. A woman of my age got pregnant. So he gave me a shot in the right thigh vein, which caused the second death. When I was finally reasonable, then my landlord informed me that the rent on our house would be doubled. I couldn't pay a doubled rent. So I was able to find another house in a lower, different part of Boise. My two daughters did not like living there at all, but we had to go because it was cheaper. So we were living there. Oh, a couple of months. The girls were gone. My son was home. He's a great big guy, great big Taurus the bull. Guess what he was doing that night? He was at the Angus bar, tossing a few with his friends, because he'd been on a cruise school in the Atlantic and was suddenly home. So he was at the Black Angus bar. Me at home, the man who had raped me came to call. And he told me why he raped me. His daughter had been raped. And he was so incensed that he wanted to understand why a man would rape a woman. So he raped me to see what that was like. And then he walked out the door. That's it. Walked out the door. And I was so shocked that I died. I just collapsed and died. I didn't find out till about a year or so later what happened. My son at the Black Angus bar was tossing a few of his friends, had a mug up, and suddenly announced it to everybody, my mother needs me, I have to go home and help my mother. Put the mug of beer down, ran out of the place, got into the car and found me. Now, we raised our children, our 3 children, to always go within. If you want to know anything, go within. So he did exactly what he was taught to do. We found out later that had he gone to a phone and called for help, they would not get there in time to save me. So my son, by doing what he did, he was always taught and knew to do, going within, finding out what to do. That's what saved me. And going within, the voice he heard said, talk. Doesn't matter what you say to your mother, just talk and talk and talk. Meanwhile, I had left planet Earth. I was gone. No way was I ever coming back to planet Earth. No way. Having a body, going through this stuff. I mean, having to meet a man like that. I mean, I'm through living. I'm gone. And planet Earth got smaller and smaller and smaller. Pretty soon I couldn't see it anymore. I'm out in space. And there's a lip of light that opened. It looked just like a lip. And it opened. And in that lip was a light. I hesitate to call it light because it was so powerful. And it drew me in. And in was this incredible vibratory oneness. And in front of me were 2 cyclones. That's what I called them, cyclones, shaped like an hourglass. Big on the top, coming down, the other one big on the bottom, coming up, just like an hourglass. And out of that space between came a power, emanating a power. And these cyclones were spinning. And this power. And I knew that was God. I could go in there, God. I wouldn't be a human anymore, planet anymore. God. And as I was looking at that light beyond light beyond light beyond light, I heard a voice speak. No, it wasn't a guide or guardian, none of that stuff. It's like the entire universe speaking. I call it the voice like none other. And that voice said, test revelation. You are to do the research. One book for each death. Book number 1 was not named. I really think that was coming back to life. My very first big book. Second book, Future Memory, was named. Future Memory is not a book, it is a labyrinth. When you start reading the book, you are entering the labyrinth. Don't skip. Stay on the path like you would in a labyrinth. And the purpose of Future Memory is to bring your brain and mind up to the next highest level possible for you. Future Memory is not a book, it is a labyrinth. I was shown how to do it. Book number 3 was a manual for developing humans. Most of us don't realize that 1,000 years ago or so, the word hue was the sound of God. Hue was God. Human was God man, God woman. How are you after a near-death experience or any kind of enlightening experience? You suddenly feel better, bigger. You know more. Maybe you don't know a lot more, but you know more. Hugh, how many of us learn when we're kids or the first grade that we are co-creator with the creator? How many of you know that? How many of you learn that in school? But you are. Each one of us is a co-creator with the creator. And a manual for developing humans shows that, teaches that, enables you to be who you are. It's simple, there's thought form drawings in it. The first thing near-death experiencers need to know after their experience is you need to learn how to think and you need to learn how to speak. Because most of us don't or aren't. We need to learn that again. And the first chapters in the book is how to think and how to speak. And they're simple. We don't know that. We don't learn that. First grade, second grade, third grade, any grade. We don't learn who we are. We're co-creators with the creator. That's who we are. And I did it. When I came back home, when I came back, my earth home, my son put me to bed. And the next morning, I did a very daring thing for me. I took myself out of allopathic care, which their normal medical doctor routine, and put myself into the care of a homeopath. I went the way of natural medicine. Well, that's supposed to work. And it kind of did. And then I started tanking. Just got worse and worse and worse. My doctor couldn't figure out what to do with me. My friends couldn't figure out what to do with me. We're now approaching November of 1977. I had had 3 major relapses by that time. I was working with a blood pressure reading of 60/60, which isn't cool. So my friends and my doctor got together and decided, truck her up to Seattle, Washington. They're having the Mind Miraculous Symposium. Maybe that different venue, the different people, the different ideas will help bring her through. So I was trucked up to Seattle, Washington, to the Mind Miraculous Symposium. And the first speaker, a physicist from Stanford. His talk was the eternal now. And his idea was that you can chart it, you can map it, you can prove through physics that there really is an eternal now. That everything happens at the same time in the same place. You can prove it. And then he flashed up on that giant screen. And I mean, this giant screen. What his idea was of the eternal now. Through physics. And it was the exact same thing I saw in my third near-death experience. Exact. And I jumped off my seat and I ran out of the auditorium and I collapsed under one of these sconces with light sconces, and it just kept rocking back and forth and back and forth. I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy. He saw it too, I'm not crazy. And from that moment on, I got well. And the next year, 1978, sold almost everything I had, sold the house. Kids were gone. And quit my job. Well, you'll love this. It was a Monday morning, 9 o'clock, and I was to see my boss I was working in the, what was the name of my department? In the analytical department of this bank. And I was to go in and see my boss and get my title. In those days, bank titles were hardly ever given to women. This was a big deal. I was going to get a bank title. And I told my boss when I got in there, I'm sorry, but I'm going to quit my job and chase rainbows. And my boss just almost went catatonic, and she said, don't say a word, sit down. This is a woman that's very, very analytical. So at 4 o'clock this morning, I had a dream. And in my dream, I had to go up to the head cashier of the bank and tell him she's going to have to replace me because I'm going to quit my job and chase rainbows. And she woke up her husband to have a witness to her dream. So there were 9 o'clock in the morning. She told me about this, and the only thing I could think of to say was, that's not fair. You knew before I did. So I quit my job. I left Idaho. Stored, whatever I could stuff into my little Ford Pinto, that's what I took with me. And I meandered across the United States, fulfilling all of my childhood dreams and wishes, including taking a trip to the bottom of the Grand Canyon on board of a mule. Did all those kinds of goofy, wonderful, incredible things. I took the money from selling my house. That was all the money I had left, and I meandered across the United States, fulfilling all of my childhood dreams and wishes. And I was to live in Falls Church, Virginia. I've never heard of a Falls Church, Virginia, but I meandered across and found it. Gave my first talk about the near-death experience. You're gonna love this, in a police station. Happened to be a big one where they had extra room for community affairs. So I got to talk about my experience on stage, told my experience, finished, and this one woman came up to me with stars in her eyes. She said, "Oh, I wish something like that would have happened to me, so I could know what you know." And I went catatonic straight. What? And I told her just gently, through meditation and dreams, and you could get some of this. And from that moment on, I never talked about my near-death experience for at least 30 to 35 years. My job was not to entertain people. My job was to do research, and that's exactly what I did. I found a lot of people who were willing to open up their college campuses and give a talk. Just suddenly, all kinds of doors opened for me to give a talk or visit groups. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And I'm, writing this down in my head or on paper, what I'm finding about the others who went through near-death experiences. Because I found lots and lots of others. And then I was told to move to Roanoke, Virginia. I'd never heard of a Roanoke, but I left my job in Washington, D.C., and I moved to Roanoke. And an interconnect company before Ma Bell hired me. I was to go out and teach in hotels and motels. I was to teach people how to use the new telephone equipment. Well, I didn't know anything about that, but I'll do that. My territory was anywhere from the Mississippi, east, north, south. So I was often on the road. I was almost all the time on the road. And things like this would happen. I would get a job in Minneapolis. So I'd hire a taxi cab and take me from the airport to the job site. And I'm a very curious person. Tell me about the tax structure here. your schools, your universities. You know, I want to know all about this town. And finally, the driver became so frustrated. Lady, I'm here from Egypt. I have, you know, the special grant he was given. He says, I don't know anything about this area. Can I tell you about the time I died? Sure. Another time I'm working in Macon, Georgia. And I left the motel where I was working and I went to a truck stop and sat down. I was reading coffee break. I'm reading, you know, from a little paperback. And a guy walked up to me. I swear this man was as white as he was tall. And he came out and says, lady, anybody sitting there with you? No. Can I sit there? Okay. So he sits down and puts his elbows on the table, gets as close to me as he could get with his face. He says, I want you to know, I still drink, I still chase women, and I still cuss sometimes. But I want you to know all about the time I died and what I saw. I mean, it was like this everywhere. Everywhere I was sent, it was like this. This one time I was sent up to New York City. They were having trouble with the telephone system, a big hotel. It was front page news because it was Japan's finest and newest. So it was our team and their team, and system wouldn't work. So my boss said, go up there, do whatever you want to do. We'll bring you back in 4 days. So they sent me up. I tried to talk to the engineers from Japan. None of them spoke English. I didn't speak Japanese. I wasn't getting anywhere with the installers. So I went way up to the top of the hotel, which is where the cabinets were, and where the crew was, the ladies to mind the phone. And I would watch them, and then when no one was looking, I'd go over to these big, huge cabinets, stacks, rows of them, and I would open the doors so that no one could see what I was doing. And then I would become light, and I would enter the system. And I'd go throughout the whole building looking for what was going on in this system. And I'd write it all down when I came back. I wrote down all the things I saw going on in the system. Turned in my report to my boss. He sent up our engineers, and the whole system fixed in 2.5 days. My boss called me into his office, never looked at me, never once. Looking at his desk only, he said, I want you to know that we fixed the entire system because of what you found. please don't ever tell me how you did it. And he got up and yeah. Well, that's kind of the way life has been. And while I was there, we attended, I was staying with people that I met, instant love, wonderful older couple. And we were attending the Unity Church in Roanoke, Virginia, and this one time, a Friday night, and I'm almost never there. But this one Friday night, they were having a visitor talk about Zen. Well, I love Zen. And I was there. So there you're, oh, goody, goody, we can all go to church together. So we did. And there was a packed group. And I'm sitting on the floor in the front row in a lotus position. Can't do those anymore, but once did. And there was this guy in the back row sitting on a chair. And Don and Nettie, we were just about came unglued because they thought the two of us had to get together. So during coffee break, Nettie was at one door, Don was at another door. They caught us, got us together, and we met. The next day, I'm working on a technical manual for my boss. And I had enough, so I walked out, and the reps live way, way north of town. So I'm out, they called it Mockingbird Hill. So I walked down the hill, and there's this guy I met. He was coming up in a car. I did not know they had invited him over for spaghetti the next day. So he wasn't good at directions. So he came the day before to make sure he could find it. So I'm coming around the hill, he's coming up the hill, and we recognized each other. And he rolled down his window and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm just going to take a walk. Would you like to walk with me?" Thought about it for a minute. Said yes. He then found a place to park his car, got out of his car, we joined hands, and we married 6 weeks later. That was in 1980. We've been married ever since. My husband, Terry, I feel, is God's gift to me. He's black, I'm white. Well, actually, he's brown and I'm speckled. I mean, have you ever looked? I'm not white, I'm speckled. And we've had all kinds of adventures together. Yeah. Writing my books. That's what I've been doing, the research. I finally decided I must be wearing some kind of placard up on the back so that wherever I go, people would read that placard and they would know that, that they could go to me. I mean, literally, I was walking the streets in downtown Washington, D.C., minding my own business, and this woman comes up to me, she's very hesitant, and kind of scared. And she said, "Please, please, please, yeah, can I talk to you? Can I tell you about the time I died? Can I tell you about this?" I mean, I'm getting out of a taxi cab. And this guy, the driver of the cab, was the blackest human being I've ever seen. I swear, his skin was so black, it was blacker than a black color crayon. I did not know human skin could get that black. So I was staring, and I was embarrassed. And he turned around and smiled, says, "You died like I did." Tells me all about his near-death experience. It's been like that. For decades and decades and decades of time. I produced 19 books, either about my findings or nearly about them. And I thought, it was true. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 45 years, God, that's enough. I want to do any more, 19 bucks. I mean, some of my work is in Lancet Medical Journal. This is real stuff. I mean, all kinds of journals. I get in the journals. I do real research, adults and children. Nearly 5,000 adults and children. And last year, August, mid-August, 3:15 in the morning, the voice speaks again. Now, bear in mind that I haven't heard that voice since 1977. Heard it again last year. And that voice said, "Another research project for you." No! I argued and I screamed and I argued and I screamed. No! I mean, I'm almost 86. Forget it. No. You are to seek out those near-death experiencers, have to be a near-death experience, who either during your experience or within the year after your experience have somehow seen an alien. Well, I've been doing this now for a year. And I'm finding those folks to be very rare. These people who have seen an alien or talk about aliens, it's before their experience or after that 1 year cutoff. Lots of near-death experiencers either see aliens or, are part of aliens or, are part of the alien culture, but not that 1 year. I think you've all been handed a flyer. Hope so. If you have heard of anybody or one yourself, I want to hear from you. Where this is leading, I do not know. I do know I'm one of them. And I don't talk about it. And I'm not going to talk about it until I conclude this study. We'll see. Been doing this for a long time, folks. Guess I'm going to do a time or two more. Yeah, my husband now is talking about retiring in a couple of years, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, God, Are you listening to Terry? I would like to retire when he does. Maybe. That'd be kind of cool. I'd like to take up painting. That would be kind of cool. I'd really like to do that. We'll see. Hey, folks, there's my experience. Thank you.
Would you entertain any questions or discussion?
Sure, do we have to have time?
Come on back to the mic then.
Long live the queen.
So,
What queen?
anyone
I'm
online,
a rascal, not a queen.
anyone online who has a question, raise your electronic hand so I can see it and we'll put you in the queue. Anybody in this room?
Good morning.
Hi.
It's so good to see you again. I had heard your story about, but you're such a great storyteller. Really, it's wonderful to hear you. The one question that comes up is, it's kind of personal, but it would answer for a lot of people.
Okay.
If I can figure it out right. My oldest son died, and I do hear a voice. I cannot say that that voice is not part of my brain. You know, like it's so, it's like when I hear him talk, it's like before I even realize that it's him, I go, oh, that was Florian. You know, like it's as if it's a backup. He says something and then I go, oh, that was Florian. So my question is, there is no difference to me between the voice of God, the voice of Florian, spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same voice. Am I right about that? Or is that just me?
Kind of, sort of.
Great answer. It's like I can distinguish the difference. And I answer it by saying to myself, when I asked that, the voice said, or the idea came, I can't say how it happens, but it's like God bumps. It's like when I tell the truth, it's like I get God bumps. So it's, how did I want to say this? I don't think it's important because I lost the train of thought, so it must not have been relevant what I wanted to say. I'm sorry.
No problem. A lot of us get voices from our dearly beloved. Sometimes we get voices from a particular guide. Sometimes we just get voices.
Yeah. Could it be that the answer to me came, we are all one. Mm-hmm. And so there is no difference in voice. It's like what you hear, you hear.
Well, kind of, maybe, sort of.
Thank you.
Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
We're living in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and we're in the top floor of 3 floors. And there was a walkway to where you can park your car or get to the postal boxes. So this one day I'm going to the postal box, and one letter was hot. It was just hot. So I went back in the house and I opened up this letter, and it's from a woman. She lost her son the year before. A motorcycle accident. And he was about to have a birthday. And he's not there, of course, but his birthday is coming up. This is a mother. And she's grieving about her son John. Would you please contact him? And so I took that letter into my office and I thought, well, okay. So I sat down on my typewriter and typing out and typing out, thinking, John, will you come through? Your mother wants to hear from you. So I'm busy typing this letter. And suddenly my youngest daughter bursts into the living room and she can see me in my office. She yells at me and she says, Mom, who's that guy leaning over your shoulder? Oh, that's John. He died last year in a motorcycle accident. And she thought for a minute, there's a guy in there leaning over my mother's shoulder, but he died last year in an automobile accident. Mom, I can't handle this. Bye. She left. And so I sent the letter off to the mother. The strangest letter I've ever written. I mean, he kept repeating himself. And I hear back from the mother, she's just elated. Oh, that's John. You got him. That's John. Thank you so much. Before I mailed it, later on that evening, my husband came home. I said, we have a visitor. Would you like to meet him? He's in my office. So I took him into the office and had him stand right where John was. And Terry went, there's something there. What is this? What's there? Oh, that's John. He died last year in a motorcycle accident. I just thought you might like to meet him. And Terry ran out of the room. So yes, sometimes it can be specific. And sometimes what drives us, what fills us is contemplative. Maybe you want to sit on a rock for a while and just think and allow it to come in and be with whatever it is that defines our universe and defines our world and defines Earth and defines where you are. I don't know about you, but often I'll just look out my back door and I'll look at the trees and the grass and the flowers and the sky, and that tells me what's going on in the earth plane. The colors, the hum, the feeling. I'll just know. And sometimes astrologically, we can know what is coming, like retrograde Mercury. Anybody ever heard of retrograde Mercury? We just got through one. Sometimes it's just like a hovering tempo that seems to just cross the earth plane or different parts of the earth plane or where you're living. And you're told things or you feel things, or it's just there. And you just flow with what's there. So I wouldn't define, I wouldn't even try to define these voices or these feelings or these rhythms. They're just there. And if we if we, hopefully we can look and know and understand and go with it. Sometimes it's part of our own growth to know, to be in line with what's coming and to know about that. All different kinds of voices and rhythms. I wouldn't try to bunch them up. I wouldn't try to label them. Just know there's all kinds of rhythms and voices. Learn to be a part of that. It's great. It saves you from a lot of screaming. What's going on now, God? I don't like this. Like what's going on in Ukraine, like what's going on in Morocco, what's going on with our earth. Let's be a part of that to the extent that we can. Yeah. Any other questions?
Anybody online?
The guy in Roanoke didn't want to know, but I want to know what was going on in that telephone system.
I don't know. I just became one with the light. And I just flowed all over the system, looking at whatever seemed to be out of rhythm, what didn't seem to be working right. And I would test it and then write it up my report.
I would venture a guess that without very much effort on your part, that in addition to analyzing the problem, you could have just flickered some fairy dust on it and made it well again, you know? Without the engineers having to spend 2 days up there.
No. I believe and I know we need both. We need the analysis and we need the trust. We need both. Bear in mind, you know, I'm a researcher. I can do all these other things, obviously, but I'm a researcher. We need both. We really need both. As long as we're wearing a human body and we lace up our shoes, I think we need them both. Yes.
Love to talk. I was hoping you'd talk about near-death experiences and reincarnation. I know some near-death experiencers have done that, but your new project makes me wonder if on other planets or systems, do they experience reincarnation? So maybe you could touch on both of that.
In the early days of near-death research, most near-death experiencers were not interested in reincarnation. We did not talk about it. There are very few that did. Now it's everywhere. Near-death experiencers talk about it a lot. So did the scientists who do the research. So do people like me. Well, I don't talk about it a lot, but a lot of them do. You know, I just returned from the big conference up in Arlington last week. It was very much a topic everywhere. It seemed like everybody was talking about it. And I viewed that as rather odd. because it's okay, it's wonderful, probably 100% accurate. I know in my life it's been very accurate. But is that really part of the near-death experience? Well, yes, it is. Now, it seems like everything is part of the near-death experience now. We've got time jumpers. We had several talks at the conference about time jumping. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff now that everybody is talking about, it seems like. And, you know, that's fine, that's good. I can talk about it, obviously. But it seemed like it would be better to help near-death experiencers be able to integrate that experience so that it enhances their everyday life. I guess I'm just a practical sort. Any other questions? Did I wear everybody out? No, here comes another one. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious to know, and I think what I'll do is I'll give you an experience that I had. It wasn't a near-death experience, but
Okay.
I'm going to relate it when I finish telling you the story. And let's see, it doesn't matter how long ago, but it was like 40 years ago. I had an experience in my sleep state, not my dream state, but my sleep state.
Okay.
About a year or two before that night, a very good friend of my brother's who grew up with us died of kidney disease. He had had it for many years. He was about 30 when he died, okay? And in my dream state, out of nowhere but black, I met John. And John was standing in a doorway, and between the door frame and John was this exquisite white light coming, you know, from around him and in between his legs, and I said, John, and I'm thinking to myself, it's been a while since I've seen him, and for some reason, everybody was unable to see him, see him again. And, he said, hi, how are you? I said, I'm fine. And I said, it's so good to see you. And I really felt that. And he said, it's so good to see you. And it's as though I wanted to, it's as if I started to run to him, to hug him, and then I was stopped by a force. I figured this out later, that it's because he was dead and I'm not. But the feeling between us, certainly for me, was this incredible feeling of love that I had never felt before. And it was better than sex. And it was so intense.
So what I wanted to know is when you, in your near-death experiences, you're the ones that you really experienced, not necessarily with anybody else unless they said the same thing. Were the feelings that you were having for your loved ones that you saw and Jesus, were those feelings as intense as I just described?
Yep, absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
I was actually out of my body when
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's better than being in body.
Oh. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're very, very welcome. Anybody else? We live forever. Yeah, that's one of my books. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, hey, ooh, I get to.
You know,
Good to be
she has been so loyal to our group. It just warms my
I love
heart.
you guys.
Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of support we've had from you is why we have survived as a group as long as we have. Thank you so much.
I hope some of you will buy a book.
Right, she's got some wonderful books over here, including, I guess, the new one, right?
Yeah, the newest one,
Yeah.
Edgewater.
So that's her memoir, but it's not her last.
Yeah. I had 2 mothers, 5 fathers, and wound up being raised by Norwegians in the reclaimed deserts of southern Idaho. So I guarantee that book is interesting. Yeah, we're through.
Oh,
Oh, you
my
wanna
God.
say
Yeah, I
something?
didn't want to say anything.
Oh,
I wanted
okay.
to talk to you.
All right, folks, that's the end of the meeting. We've got Nelson Marquita coming up next month. And thank you for being here. Wilma Langeveld wants to give an announcement about something going on at Unity tonight.
Tonight, yeah. I wanted to say it really quick. I don't know if I need a microphone. I can. Tonight at Unity at 5 o'clock, we have a shrimp dinner and you can just come and pay for the dinner. It's all the shrimp you can eat, $18. And then that night, there is music in the gardens, and literally my hair is standing up because that is so beautiful. The gardens will be lighted. There's going to be Claudia singing and a saxophone, and it's a meditation garden. So it's worth your while to just even go to that or make that for an hour. I think off the top of my head, because I just thought of it to tell you, that it's at 7 o'clock, but it could be 6:30. Like, don't hold me to it. I just know that the dinner starts at 5 and like it's all you can eat and it's $18. And then they would love a love offering for the band. And I have about 20,000 questions for P.M.H. Atwater, so I held myself back. But this is, if you look for this book, this was the only one, and I'm taking it.